Well, welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson, and what a delight and an honor to have back with us today Dr. Robert Jeffress. He's the pastor of the First Baptist Church in Dallas, Texas, and perhaps you've caught him on Fox News. He is a Fox News contributor. He's the host of a great radio and television program entitled Pathway to Victory. The television program we hope to get here on the Dove TV network shortly. We are working with his team on that. His latest book, Countdown to Apocalypse, and I don't know if you saw him on Bill O'Reilly a couple of nights ago, but he was a little upset. Pastor Jeffress, nice to see you again. How you doing, my friend?
Well, fine, Perry. Good to be with you.
Yeah, good to see you. Well, let me go to that event quickly. You were responding to the president's speech there at the National Day of Prayer, where he was pretty much scolding us Christians about getting on our high horse. I'll let you pick it up from there.
Well, you know, I was offended as a Christian, but more importantly, I guess in this context, I was really concerned as an American that we have a commander-in-chief that was just so clueless about the source or the severity of the threat against us. Look, I mean, we all admit, Perry, that Christians have done horrible things in the name of Christianity. But here's the difference between extremist Christians and radical Islamists. When a Christian acts violently, he's acting in opposition to his faith. There is not one single verse in the New Testament you can cite that says Christians ought to kill the infidels. But when Muslims commit acts of violence, they can point to 35 sword verses in the Quran that say, kill the infidel. You know, Jesus was the Prince of Peace. He said, love your enemies. Muhammad, the founder of Islam, was the Prince of War. He said, and I quote, crucify your enemies, amputate their limbs. And that's the big difference between radical Islam and extremist Christians.
You know, Pastor, as crazy as that statement was, it has more legs than I thought. It's still being talked about among the news people, and even among a lot of non-believing people who are not Christians say he is totally wrong in his statement. Did he brand himself with this speech?
I think what was really disturbing about this, if it had been any other president and this were an isolated comment, it probably wouldn't have made the news. But again, this is a continuing pattern this president seems to have of doing everything he can to ignore the very real threat of radical Islam. And again, it was followed up by the release the next day of that Vox interview in which he said the attacks in Paris were random shootings, that these terrorists just happened to go into a kosher deli. That is ridiculous. It was targeted because it was a Jewish restaurant. And this is, Perry, what I talk about in my book, Countdown to the Apocalypse. The rise of radical Islam, I believe, is one of the phenomena today that point to what I believe could very well be what Jesus called the last days. And, you know, this is going to be a continuing pattern. You may have seen me on Sean Hannity Monday night. And I said to my good friend Geraldo Rivera, I said, Geraldo, you're not going to be able to reform radical Islam, because at the heart of radical Islam and all of Islam is a deep hatred for Israel. And that deep hatred predates Muhammad 1,400 years ago. It goes back thousands of years ago between that initial conflict between the descendants of Isaac and the descendants of Ishmael over who really owns that real estate we call Israel. And Islam will not rest until the Jews are exterminated off the face of the earth. And that's what this is all about.
Yeah, no question about it. All right, I want to go down that road a little bit with you, Pastor, and that is that we're seeing a lot and hearing a lot now about end times. And I think that's good because it certainly opens up the door for great evangelism. But it's also very dangerous because we're hearing some extremes. You write in your book about 3 things to avoid when studying the end times. Can you share those with us?
Yes, and let me just say, I know some of our viewers right now have a raised eyebrow when they hear the title of my book, Countdown to the Apocalypse, Why ISIS and Ebola Are Only the Beginning. Look, I admit in the first chapter, you know, there's one extreme we need to avoid called fanaticism, and that is attempting to set dates. You know, anytime you hear somebody talk about Bible prophecy and say, I know we're not supposed to set dates, but you need to write them off. Jesus said in Matthew 24, no man knows the hour or the day. You know, Christopher Columbus thought that the world would end in 1636. Martin Luther thought that the world could not last 300 years past his death. We think about the late radio preacher Harold Camping. Everybody who's tried to set dates has been proved wrong. And I do not try to set dates in this book, Countdown to the Apocalypse. But we also need to avoid another extreme, Perry, that quite frankly I think is more prevalent among Christians today, and that's fatalism. It's the idea, well, the world's going to end. It's already on God's calendar. There's nothing we can do. We just need to sit on our blessed assurances and wait for the Lord to return. Look, nothing could be further from the truth. And I like to tell people, I know I'm going to die one day, but I still exercise. I still go to the doctor, not because I'm fearful of dying, but I want to live as long as I can to fulfill God's purpose for my life. And in the same way, I think as Christians, there's no room for Christian pacifism. We need to stand up. We need to push back against evil and try to give this world as long as possible to hear the message of Jesus Christ. And then the third extreme, which I also find among Christians, is cynicism. Oh, we have heard this all before. The world is going to end, and it hasn't yet. In Matthew 24 and 25, Jesus said the signs of his coming would be like the labor pains that a woman experiences. Toward the end, they are going to increase in frequency as well as intensity. In some way, these phenomena that I talk about in Countdown to the Apocalypse, whether it's the rise of radical Islam, increasing moral disorder, the persecution of Christians worldwide. Perry, some people would say, well, that's been around forever. And that's true in one sense. But like labor pains, they are going to increase in frequency and intensity when the end is about to come. I think that's what we're seeing right now. And Jesus said, when you see these things begin to happen, take note, look up, for your redemption is near.
Wow, beautifully said, Pastor. I want to come back to the subject of cynicism because it is almost a cancer today in us and among us, because a lot of Christians are saying, well, America must fall and fail. And all that's going on right now is part of God's plan. And so it's a do-nothing attitude. I'm really concerned about that because, on the other hand, it is our golden hour to deliver the gospel.
It is. And by the way, this book, although it sounds like a doom and gloom book, Countdown to the Apocalypse, it's really a hope-filled book. The word apocalypse is a positive word. It's apocalypsis in Greek. It's the word revelation. It's the title of the last book of the Bible. The apocalypse means the revelation, the unveiling of Jesus Christ. And while there are going to be some terrible things that happen before that, the ultimate end is great. But Perry, you've said it well. If your goal as a Christian is peace, prosperity, the avoidance of pain and pleasure, well, these are terrible times in which to be living. But if your goal, like the Apostle Paul, is to share the message of Christ with as many people as possible, well, there could not be a better time to be alive and be a Christian, because as this world gets darker and darker, the hope of the gospel shines that much more brightly. And so I think you're exactly right. This is not a time to be cynical. I think we ought to push back against evil. I don't understand this, but God said he was going to destroy the city of Nineveh. But in Jonah 3:10, it says God relented of his decision. He gave Nineveh longer to repent because of the righteous actions of Jonah. Now, interestingly, God did destroy Nineveh eventually. Okay.
We got a little bit of a freeze there on the Skype. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back with Dr. Robert Jeffress. He is the pastor of the First Baptist Church in Dallas, Texas. They run about 11,000 members there. His book is called Countdown to Apocalypse, and he's doing a wonderful job explaining that. There's a picture of it there on the screen, those watching on the Dove TV. And let me take a quick break. We'll reconnect, and we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Paulina, and I work at the Dove TV. Did you know that when you support the Dove TV, you have a profound impact, not only in our community, but around the world? It's your continued support that takes the inspiration and hope in the programs we produce and makes them available to the thousands of people who are watching these videos online every week. Help bring encouragement and hope to our valley and beyond by making a secure online donation today at our website, thedove.us.
back, and delighted to have back with us today, and honored to have Dr. Robert Jeffress. He is the pastor of the First Baptist Church in Dallas, Texas. They run about 11,000. He's on radio, television. He's a Fox News contributor. His program, Pathway to Victory, is an excellent program, both on radio and television. Let me encourage you to listen and watch. We hope to get it here soon on the Dove TV network. His latest book, Countdown to Apocalypse, that's what we're talking about. There's a picture on the screen, and you may want to check it out online or at the bookstores. Nice to have you back, Pastor. Sorry about that. Technology is wonderful when it works. It's stressful when it doesn't.
Another sign of the end times right here.
Well, listen, great. A couple of things here. You mentioned in the book Ebola. Why?
Yeah. Well, you know, the subtitle of the book is Why ISIS and Ebola Are Only the Beginning. Jesus said in Luke 21, in the last days there will be famines, earthquakes, and pestilences. And that word refers to epidemic diseases, infectious diseases. And, you know, whether or not he's referring to Ebola or anthrax or the measles, the point is what we saw with the Ebola outbreak, I think, is just a forerunner of what could happen in the future. And, you know, let me say again, Perry, I think a lot of Christians are skeptical about this idea of the end times, or they think it's none of their business because of some of the extremes in the teaching of Bible prophecy. But, you know, in Matthew 24, when the disciples asked the Lord, Lord, what shall be the sign of your coming and the end of the age? Jesus didn't say, mind your own business. That's not your concern. Concentrate on loving me and leave the rest of it to me. Instead, he gave them a very detailed outline of the events that would precede his return. And he said, you need to be aware of these things. And I think God wants us to understand what is happening. You know, in 1 Chronicles 12:32, the sons of Issachar were described as men who understood their times and knew what they should do. And we need to understand our times. Billy Graham, the great evangelist, who, by the way, was a member of our church, First Baptist Dallas, for 53 years. Billy Graham has said that when he looks at world events, he does so with his newspaper in one hand and his Bible in the other hand. And I think we need to look at what is happening in the world today through the lens of Scripture. And that's what I'm trying to do in this reasoned book called Countdown to the Apocalypse.
You also talk about the redefinition of marriage and the increase of abortion as being part of the end times. And explain that. Well,
apparently every liberal blog in America has lit up this week with my comments on Fox about that I believe that the redefinition of marriage is one of the signs of the end times. But Paul said in 2 Timothy 3 that in the last days it will be terrible times. And that word terrible is a Greek word that means without restraint. And I think that's what we're seeing today. We are living in a culture in which there is no moral restraint. You look at the attempt to redefine the most basic institution God created, the family, by the redefinition of marriage. You look at the new level of perversion in our country. Why, as we're airing this broadcast today, you know, this new movie, 50 Shades of Perversion, that is coming out. It is a new low in cultural standards. I think this is what the Bible is talking about when he says in the last days there will be no moral restraint.
Wow. Okay. Now, the question I have is, how do we Christians do what the Bible says when it says, love our enemy or turn the other cheek, and yet fight evil? Yeah. I mean, when the enemy is evil, what do we do?
Well, I think, again, there is no place for Christian pacifism. We are to stand up against evil and not fall for the line that, for example, if you believe that marriage should be between a man and a woman, that is somehow a hateful comment to make. It's as if you are opposing civil rights. Look, it's very clear that marriage is not a constitutional right. If it were, 15-year-olds would have the right to marry. They're American citizens. Siblings would have the right to marry. They're American citizens. New York Magazine just recently carried an article about an 18-year-old girl who had been separated from her biological father. They were reunited. They have fallen in love, and they want to marry one another. Now, if marriage is a constitutional right, then there is no basis to refuse a father and daughter from getting married. But the truth is, throughout our country's history, the government has seen that there is a societal reason to restrict marriage to being between a man and a woman. Just this week, the British Journal of Medicine released a story about how children in same-sex marriages fare worse than any other demographic or type of home in which children are reared. There is a reason that children need an environment in which they are connected to both of their biological parents. And while that's not always possible, the government ought to encourage that relationship by saving the definition of marriage for that unique man and woman relationship. That's not a hateful thing to say, Perry. That is a loving thing to say, and we need to keep saying it regardless of the fallout.
Beautifully said, Pastor. All right. How do we fight pluralism when the Christian church is being forced to be just one of many? Therefore, we all believe in the same God and all roads lead to heaven. How do we counter that in our culture?
Well, I think Christians need to be armed with the truth and to say without hesitation, all religions are not the same. And of course, even you hear this among Christians. I hear it. Well, you know, Muslims worship the same God that we do. As I point out in my book, Countdown to the Apocalypse, Allah of the Quran is not Jehovah God of the Bible. Names mean something. I mean, just for example, Perry, just assume that you had announced to your audience that today you were going to be interviewing Dr. David Jeremiah. And then I pop up on the screen and somebody says, well, Pastor, what's wrong with David Jeremiah? Was he sick? Why isn't he here today? And I were to say, well, you know, David Jeremiah is just another name I go by. Sometimes I use David Jeremiah, sometimes Chuck Swindoll, sometimes Joel Osteen, sometimes I go by Al Sharpton. We're all preachers. We're all the same person. Well, you'd laugh me off the screen. No, names mean something. The God of the Bible is not Allah of the Quran. And we need to be very clear about this, that there are not many roads to God. There is one way to God through his son, Jesus Christ. And if we really believe that, it's the most loving thing that we could do for a person to introduce that person to faith in Christ.
It's been said, Pastor, that the hope for America lies within the pulpits of America, the pastors. They're going to have to step up now and really get with the program. Do you believe that?
I do believe it. And frankly, Perry, I don't blame the condition of our culture on non-Christians. I blame the deterioration of our culture. I lay that blame at the feet of wimpy, wishy-washy Christians, and specifically Christian pastors who will not teach the unadulterated truth of God's word. We are to be salt, but as Jesus said, the salt has lost its flavor. It's lost its saltiness. We have allowed the world to transform our thinking more than allowing our thinking to transform the world, and that's why we're in the shape we're in. And I would just encourage the viewers today, if you're in a church where the pastor wimps out, he waters down the truth of God's word, he is preaching feel-good sermons instead of the hard truth of God's word, you need to run, not walk, out of that church as quickly as possible and become a part of a Bible-believing fellowship.
Wow. All right. Israel, just for a moment. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's coming to town March 3rd. A lot of controversy over that. You know it well. The vice president seems to be too busy to attend. Some senators are flat going to boycott it. What in the world are we doing to ourselves by turning our back on him?
Well, again, I asked my friend Geraldo Rivera this week, Geraldo, can you explain to me why the president was willing to meet with Muslim leaders last week, but he won't meet with Prime Minister Netanyahu? Look, we know how this is going to end. As I point out in my book, Countdown to the Apocalypse, the future of radical Islam is laid out in the Bible. You know, Netanyahu's warning of a future Iranian invasion of Israel. Well, there was another Jewish statesman who beat Netanyahu to the punch 2,500 years ago. His name was Ezekiel. And in Ezekiel 38, Ezekiel mentions Iran by name. It was called Persia then, and says in the end, there will be an amalgamation of Muslim nations that will indeed invade Israel. And we ought to be supporting Israel right now. God is ultimately going to vindicate Israel. God has said that land belongs to his people, and they will occupy it one day.
Do you think the rise of replacement theology is just part of the end times propaganda?
I think it is absolutely, positively rooted in a misunderstanding of Scripture. Look, God made his promise to Israel, to believing Israel in Genesis 12, and in Genesis 15, he made it clear it was an unconditional covenant. If believing Israel disobeyed God, they would suffer the consequences, but God would never disavow the eternal covenant he made, not with political Israel, not with national Israel, but for believing Jews. I believe there is a special promise of that land and blessing that God unconditionally promised to them thousands of years ago.
Wow. Well, Pastor, I know your time is precious, and I value it greatly. Thank you for letting us have a few moments. I think I warmed you up for Sunday's preaching.
Let's go. Let's pass the conference.
Are you going to be at the NRB?
I'm going to be delivering the keynote address Tuesday night, so I'll look forward to seeing you guys there.
We'll see you there. Thank you, my friend. Blessings on you. Keep up the good work.
Thank you all very much.
All right. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Paula, and I work at theDove TV. Every day we get letters and emails from people who've been encouraged, blessed, and challenged by the programs on theDove TV. But we couldn't do it without you. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to bring inspiration and hope to our community by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or call us at 541-776-5368.
Welcome back, and delighted to have back in the studio with us today Diane Kostmatka and also Chaplain Fred Crewe, the co-host of the Choosing Options, Honoring Options, coho, not a fish, it's a program. And delighted to have them back with us today. And Diane and Fred, good to see you. Hi, how are you? In today's paper, right?
Yes, today's
You brought
paper.
that in. I wanted everybody to see that. In today's Medford
Local section, half-page ad on the coho series.
There it is. It's all there for you. What's this year's series? What are you doing?
So this is our 5th year, and people have said, well, I went to that one time, so I don't need to go again, do I? And it's like, yeah, we're talking the same subject, which is just, choosing people's options for what would you want. If you had a serious or advancing illness, what kind of things would you want if the doctor confronted you for mom or your wife or grandparents? Do they want a tube feed? Would they want to be intubated or go into ICU and have the intubation and resuscitation? And what kind of choices would you want? For us, I mean, sitting here walking around Safeway, it's like, yeah, you drop, you get in. Yeah. But someone with advancing disease, that's the real crux of the matter, where these decisions are facing all of us. You hear of strange stories where someone has a massive stroke or an aneurysm, and it's like, oh no, that's awful. So kind of having the discussion, having that conversation before that time comes.
You deal with it every day. I deal with it at certain levels, but I got to tell you, people are just not prepared, and these are series you need to go to. That's all I can say. It's so important. Fred, good to see you again. You deal with this a lot. What are some of the biggest issues people struggle with at the end of life?
Without question. Not everybody at the end of life struggles with issues, but the ones that do, when there's an issue, it's this loss of meaning, this loss of autonomy. I'm stuck in a bed, I can't do anything. And I think it goes to a deep question in our culture. I think in our culture, basically, we have value and worth if we can consume and if we can produce. And when it comes to the time that we really can't produce anything for anybody and we can't consume anything, why am I still here? And that, I call it an existential pain. Why am I? The people that struggle with that, it is really painful, and there's no medication really for that.
Boy, I have never thought of that. That is stunning. So where does faith come in at that point?
Well, that is a great question. I mean, am I really what my culture tells me? I have value and worth as long as I can produce or consume, or do I find my value in something else like the Scriptures? And what does God say? Am I only of value as long as I can produce something, or if I can consume something, or does God value me for something else than my ability to produce or consume. And I think that's where faith has a great answer.
All right, Diane, the series is how long?
Series is this year, it was a couple months last year. This time it is 5 different sessions.
5 different sessions.
Ending with National Healthcare Decision Day, which is April the 16th, day after taxes, death and taxes, okay? So April 16th nationally is National Healthcare, or National Health Decision Day. So that date, people will be able to support them and help them in filling out their advance directive should they choose. Sign up with the RSVP so we have enough facilitators with the people that want help.
All right, February 19th, February 26th, March 12th, March 19th, and April 16th. These are the 5 sessions. What do they do? How do they get signed up?
Oh, they can just show up at the Smollen. So at the Smollen Center, it's twice a day. We've kind of arranged that in years past because people work and it's like, well, I can't.
Great, yeah.
So 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 7 o'clock at night, same program. First one is on spiritual matters. What's the title, Fred? It's
looking at the life cycle with different spiritual traditions. And just to clarify, you only need to register for April 16th. The other ones are free and open.
Okay.
Okay, so the April 16th, that's when we'll have folks there to help people work, to help them develop whatever it is they want at the end of their life. So that we want to make sure we have enough staff there, so that's why the registration, but that's April 16 only. The other ones,
starting this next week.
Starting next Thursday. You just come and enjoy. And so there's a panel. Father Joel Marano of the Manor has invited different people representing different faith groups to come and sort of share, what do you guys teach about the end of life and the afterlife? And so there'll be a panel of folks of different faith orientations there to share, you know,
that's great.
Their perspective.
I just can't say enough about wherever you are in life, you need to go to this. I think pre-planning is everything. And Diane, you and I have worked together close enough to know that we've seen both extremes.
We're at the bedside a lot of patients in the hospital a lot.
We both have parking lots there. But you know, what's interesting is those who have planned and those who haven't. And those who haven't, all the frustrations and the pain and the things that people go through. And this is what this is to avoid.
And you know, this is more just not doing the plan of post advance directive. This is just educating people on what, you know, what kind of transitions people go through, and as we age and as our health is failing us. So the spiritual tradition it's rich, it's wonderful. The second one, February 26th, I'll say briefly, is a wonderful person, Liz Cole, who had been an actress in remember the play Wit, where a person is diagnosed. She's she had been doing this, and she now teaches in medical schools across the nation. Physicians. What did we learn from WIT? What did we learn about what doctors say to patients and how they receive that information? It's powerful. So we've paid a lot to get her here. She's phenomenal. So that's next on the 26th. And then the third, Forks in the Road, John Forsyth, Dr. Brian Gross, and Bruce Van Zee are going to talk about that middle section of the post. What do these 3 things mean? Because full treatment or limited interventions or comfort care, what do those things mean if you choose those boxes? So those doctors are each talking about one section. That's good. And then the thespian. We have actors from Shakespeare. And this year, I have to read it, it says, "Mom, not at Thanksgiving dinner." Mom's trying to have the talk at Thanksgiving dinner, telling the kids what she wants. And so this play, when people leave these plays, Peter Quince, a playwright at Shakespeare, he's done one every year for the past few years. And this one is supposed to be unbelievable. But people leave the auditorium at Smollen going, I need to fill this thing out.
Yeah.
Because it really moves people in a different way, seeing this acted.
I just got to say, see this little pink, if you haven't filled one of these out, stop. Go find one and fill it out.
Well, you have to go to your doctor.
You got to go to your doctor, and you get that.
Get this. This tells you know who's going to talk for me if I can't. This is the most important.
It's just wonderful.
Lots of information.
Fred, you've been there. What an incredible time that faith can interact with families and family members, and a time to really turn to Christ. Help me with this. People can see that as an opportunity too.
They can. Here is the dance. All right, so I am a hospice chaplain.
Okay.
In the past 10 years, I've been with about 1,000 folks that have passed away. And the great teaching for chaplains that work in this field is to be very sensitive to not impose your faith on someone that is compromised by their health, their mental capacity, and their emotional ability while they're dying. For example, would we be comfortable if a Muslim chaplain came in and tried to convert someone to Islam on their deathbed?
Yeah, right.
Or pick any, particular faith. And so it is a very delicate dance that we do. The role that I am given is to support people in what they believe. Now, when it comes to the time if they say, I really don't know what's going on, what do you think? Now I'm free to share my personal faith. But unless I'm invited in, and that really is, it's a way of honoring where the person's at, but also not to exploit someone at the end of their life, which no one would want, And so it's a really delicate thing. What I try to do, one of my favorite quotes is attributed to Francis of Assisi, who supposedly, I've read everything he wrote, he didn't write a lot, but he supposedly said somewhere, and I haven't been able to find it, but he told his brothers, preach the gospel always, and when necessary, use words. Right. So I try to come in, they know I'm a Christian. I mean, I make that known as I come in, but I try to behave and honor the person in such a way that my faith screams, even though my words are measured. And that really, it's a way of honoring the person, but oftentimes, many of the folks I visit generally aren't affiliated with a church. If they already have a church, their pastor's coming, they don't need a new chaplain.
Right, right.
So many of the folks that I visit, I would say plus the 95, upwards of 95%, have really no practicing faith, but they always allow me to pray with them. And so, and often, I would say, upwards of 90% of the time, they end up in tears as I pray for them. Yeah. And so that's, but it's Perry, it's a balance,
Yeah, I can see where it is, but at the same time, it's amazing how even Christians won't deal with their own mortality. They keep pushing it back. And I think there's a stewardship issue here.
Yes,
there is.
There's a stewardship issue here of you being good stewards of who you are, what you believe, and your resources, so that you're not burdening your family with decisions at the end of life.
But isn't this all part of taking care of business? At that crossroads where it's like, I don't think I'm getting any better. Yeah. Or the family realizes, I'm not getting any better. So what's the business? And so a lot of it at times is coming back to your faith. Some people say, well, yeah, I was kind of raised, and they'll fill in the blank. Yeah. And you'll see that despair in their eyes, like I wasn't as good as I was told I should have been. Yeah. So that's part of that taking care of business. But truthfully, there's a lot of business that people should be taking care of.
And that's what Coho's about.
Yeah.
Let me encourage you again. You can show up to Smullen Centers. It'll start next Thursday, February 19th, and they do 2 sessions a day. One, it starts at 2 in the afternoon. The other one at 7 at night. And that's really terrific. So if you have the day off, you can do that. If you can do it in the evening. Folks, this is a service.
Yeah.
Don't avoid this. It's there. And the first 4 are free, and then the last one on the 16th of April is a little bit different there. But
RSVP,
yeah, RSVP on that one.
But it's still free.
Okay, thank you. I want to say thanks for what you guys provide. This
thanks
is
for
remarkable.
Getting the word out.
Well, hey. Lately, I've been dealing a lot with this stuff, I guess at the age I'm at, and friends and family and everything else, but it's amazing. What a difference of people who have faith, those who don't, but what a difference of those who are prepared and those who have not.
Right.
And I think that's what we need to do. So, Fred, thank you for what you do.
Listen, I want to say thank you. I think it was brilliant on the day before Valentine's Day that you invited Beauty and the Beast.
That's really good.
Well, listen, before I let you go, Beast, I want to come back to that one little thought you had. I've never thought about that. What do you say to a person who can't give or take?
Look, that's not a soundbite. That
is a show?
That is a show. I mean, I really work to develop a rapport with someone, and then I question. And see, this is sort of where have you found meaning? You know, are you just what you can produce and consume? But is there's more to you than this? And so one of the things I greatly try to do is help folks reframe their meaning at the end of life, and how can they still, even while they can't produce something, how can they give love to their family? How can they bless their family? And that's actually the subject of the doctorate that I'm finishing this year and that I'm working on, is trying to teach people that don't particularly have a faith background or have never been blessed how to bless their survivors before they go, as a way to reframe meaning at the end of their life.
But isn't part of it hope as well? Helping people to, you know, they're dying, they're losing their health, but where do they find meaning or hope in the midst of dying? That's a big one, because especially for Christians, Perry, you know, the faith believing, you know, I'm going to name it and claim it, God's going to heal me. And do that miracle, and people, you don't want to say, kind of don't think that's coming, but how do you give someone hope in the midst of dying?
Wow.
That's a big one.
All right. Well,
and that takes time.
The program is called COHO, Choosing Options, Honoring Options. And again, it starts next Thursday at the Smullen Center, and for the next 5 terms there, and no charge. And 2 in the afternoon, or again at 7 at night. Thank you both for coming in, and thank you for what you do. And I think Chaplain Fred, I'm going to have you come back and do your doctorate on the air.
Whenever you want.
And he wrote a book last year that came out, so that's another program.
So you're in a PhD program for this?
Well, it's a DMin, Doctor of Ministry.
Okay, so
people have called me a demon most of my life. So now I will actually earn the title.
Demon.
It's for working professionals to do their doctorate while they're working.
Yeah, right. But the subject is what you just mentioned.
Yes, exactly.
It's fascinating. I just never thought of it. That's really great. Yeah. Thanks both.
Right.
Thanks for what you do. Thanks for coming in, but thanks for what God's called you both to do. Okay?
Thanks.
All right, we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Daniel and I work at theDove TV. You know, compared to Portland, Seattle, and LA, Medford might be considered a small market, but at theDove, we're excited about the opportunity to make a big impact right here in our community. And you help make that happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us now by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or by phoning 541-776-5368.
Well, welcome back. And well, the state of Oregon is in the news, national news to say the least, especially what's going on with our governor. But we also are currently in our legislative session. Delighted to have back with us today Scott Jorgensen. He's a legislative staffer, author. He's a former reporter, and he's kind of our man on the streets now up there at the Capitol for us to find out what's going on. Hi, Scott. How you doing, my friend? Good to see you.
Good morning, Perry. It's been a very long and interesting week, as you can imagine.
I can't imagine what's circling around up there. We've been reporting that the Senate President Courtney and Speaker of the House Kotek have met with the governor, basically asked him to step down. We now understand that the Oregon Government Ethics Commission, that whole investigation has shifted maybe over to the Attorney General. So what's going on?
So that's a real game changer in and of itself, because the Government Ethics Commission, for one, is appointed by the governor, and for two, they have very limited authority. Their investigatory power is very limited, and in terms of their sanctioning ability, it's oftentimes limited to a letter of reprimand and a fine or something like that. So essentially what happened was there was pressure building due to a lot of the excellent reporting happening at the Willamette Week. And what's ironic is that the Willamette Week is published by the Attorney General's husband, and they wrote an article or two pointing out the fact that under Oregon law, she is required to investigate these kinds of allegations, that there's no wiggle room in the law. It says, shall investigate. And so now it's shifted over to the Attorney General's office, and the latest on that is that she has ordered the governor's girlfriend, Sylvia Hayes, to turn over her emails to the Oregonians to comply with the public records request.
Wow. I would imagine if she does, it's going to be revealing. If she doesn't, it's revealing. If he resigns, does all this go away?
No, not by any stretch of the imagination. All the investigations will continue. And it's been almost surreal around here, just the overall atmosphere, and it's been a huge distraction. We're just starting a legislative session. There's a lot of really important business to be done, and there's TV news crews all over the Capitol and even camped outside of the governor's house right now. And it's been interesting, but I can tell you that it all happened really fast yesterday. It was right around noon when Peter Courtney, the Senate President, Speaker Tina Kotek, and Treasurer Ted Wheeler, all right around the same time, started publicly calling for the governor's resignation. And then a couple of hours later, this real bombshell of an article appeared in the Willamette Week, alleging that the governor was trying to order people at the Department of Administrative Services to delete emails. Now, the governor's staff is in full damage control mode about that, saying, well, this is a routine request, but it looks really bad, as you can imagine. And so there's still a lot of fallout happening from that. And I can tell you that a lot of the Democratic staffers and legislators, and even a lot of us on the other side of the aisle, were just walking around literally ashen, the blood drained from their face. Like, nobody can believe any of what's going on right now. But it's a huge distraction from the very important business that needs to be done in this building right now.
All right, Scott, bottom line, it just doesn't look like he can stay in office. I mean, I don't know how he could recover. The session is being compromised. The office is being compromised. Integrity and truth is being compromised. I mean, the only thing left for him to do is to resign.
Well, and he famously stated when he left office the first time that this state is ungovernable. And I would submit that at this moment in time, given everything that's happening and continues to happen, that it will remain ungovernable as long as he is in office.
All right. One of the things that you mentioned last time we were together, that the carbon bill got through the Senate, and I don't know, it was on fast track to the House. Did it get through the House?
So at this point, it's passed out of committee, and it's going to be up for a full Senate vote on Tuesday. And it's still very controversial. And the position that the Senate Republicans are taking is that this bill should be referred to the people. That if this is such a great idea, if there's so much public support for this, then let's let the people vote on it. Once it gets through the Senate, it'll be over in the House. So it's early enough in the legislative process to where there are still opportunities to stop it. It'll still have to be vetted through committee over on the House side and take a full vote over in that chamber. But this is all, once again, against the backdrop of everything that's happening right now.
Well, this is the bill that's got this is the bill that's got Sylvia Hayes' fingerprints all over it.
Well, it's low carbon fuel standards, and the allegation is that she was being paid by folks to advance exactly this kind of agenda. And that's why people really need to be concerned about all of this. And this is a bill that's being fast-tracked, and it almost feels like some folks are trying to get this through before people were paying attention. And they are now, and I think there's still a chance to stop it if the public decides to participate in this process and let it be known that they're against this.
Yeah. Senate Bill 1, Oregon's ill-fated healthcare exchange. How's it progressing?
Well, some amendments have been proposed and adopted, and so that's moving its way through the process. And that's being complicated because apparently Oracle, the software company that's been involved in this, is raising objections to how this is being done. And so that's another really important issue that's playing out throughout this legislative session. So yeah, Senate Bill 1's another one of the bills that people will want to keep an eye on.
What about the minimum wage?
So there's a series of bills, both in the House and the Senate, that are going to take aim at this issue. A lot of them deal with preemptions because right now under Oregon law, cities and counties can't set their own minimum wages. And so there's some bills that would remove those prohibitions. Some of the proposals call for a gradual increase over the next few years in the minimum wage. And we're hearing from business owners down in Medford and Jackson County as to what the impacts on their operations will be because of this. So those bills are all going to start moving in the next couple of weeks.
So for the most part, I mean, is the work of the people going on now? I mean, you're in committees, but with this whole thing swirling around the governor's office, what's happening? I mean, can the work get done, or is it just stalled?
It's still getting done, and truth be told, a lot of bills are moving right now, and the vast majority of them are being passed out of committee unanimously. They're slight fixes to existing laws and bills that were requested by constituents here and there, and that have, they're non-controversial and they have broad bipartisan support. And I also can't emphasize enough that the majority of the legislators in this building are dedicated, hardworking, and sincere. Even some of the absolute most liberal folks in the building I have a lot of respect for because they are representing their constituency. And so, in a way, a lot of what's happening right now is a black eye for this state. It's unprecedented in the history of this state. But I still have tremendous faith in these institutions and a lot of the people in them. That was one of the things that came out about that Willamette Week story, was that the folks in the Department of Administrative Services refused to comply with the request to delete emails. All of them. They all said, this is not right. We are not going to do this. And so the people's business will get done one way or the other, but it would be nice to not have these distractions anymore, because it is creating a very unique atmosphere. And I will point out that the last time one of our governors resigned, it was Doug McKay, and it was so he could become Secretary of the Interior under the Dwight Eisenhower administration.
Yeah. The process, though, it would go to Kate Brown, Secretary of State. Then she would then appoint a replacement for her position. So we would have two key people in the state that were not voted upon by the people for their position.
Well, that's true. And then if she decides to appoint a sitting legislator, then there'd have to be an appointment process for somebody else to come in and take their position. So there's a lot of behind the scenes pre-positioning going on right now.
Now, politically speaking, just politically speaking, if Kate Brown becomes governor, I mean, she's actually a little bit more left than John Kitzhaber, isn't she?
Yes, and I've heard different people talk about what exactly that would mean. I mean, Governor Kitzhaber, to his credit, had represented the Roseburg area in the legislature. I was a member of the House and a member of the Senate. Kate Brown is from Portland, and that's been kind of her prism. But I know a lot of people in the building do respect her, and I think a lot of people have resigned themselves to the fact that she is very likely going to be our next governor, and probably sooner rather than later.
Well, Scott, thanks for what you do. You guys remain in our thoughts and prayers. I just can't imagine the atmosphere up there. The rumors must be flying like crazy, and I guess it'll happen when it happens. Right now, he seems to be dug in, but I don't know how he can possibly survive this.
Well, like I said, I mean, it is almost surreal, and there's a lot of chatter in the hallways, and even before I got to work this morning, I was already getting multiple calls and texts from people all over the state wondering what exactly is going on. And everyone in this building is just as curious as everybody outside of it.
Yeah. Okay, well, thanks, my friend. Keep up the good work. And if anything happens, we'll be in contact. In the meantime, thanks for being the hawk on some of these bills so we, the citizens, know what's really going on up there.
Well, and I would like to close with that. The voter motor bill, House Bill 2177, is being heard in the Ways and Means Committee literally right now as we speak. And people can go to the legislative website. I highly recommend it. It's very user-friendly, www.oregonlegislature.gov. With our system of government, we get the government that we deserve. And I think I'm not alone in saying that right now, we deserve better than this.
Yeah, no question about it. Thanks, Scott. Got to go. See you next time, okay?
All right.
Thank you. All right, there he is, Scott Jorgensen with us today. And again, he makes a great point. You may want to check out the OregonLegislature.gov website and let your voice be known, and especially on this motor voter bill, which, by the way, is coming out of the Secretary of State's office. It's all connected. You may want to let your legislators know what you think about that. All right, thanks for being with us today, and have a great weekend. We'll see you next time on Focus Today.
Hi, I'm Jim, and I work at theDove TV. Every weekday between 6 and 8 a.m., our award-winning news and sports team bring you the best morning show around. It's live, it's honest, and it's a whole lot of fun. And you help make it happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to air local programs that share your voice by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us.